He left a $5,000 tip the single mom waitress. Thanked him, not knowing he was an Italian mafia boss. The rain didn't just fall on Port Providence, it assaulted it. A hard, cold sheet of water driving sideways off the Atlantic, blurring the neon sign of the Harbor Light Diner until it bled pink and blue onto the asphalt. It was almost midnight. Inside. The 24-hour joint was a graveyard, smelling of stale coffee and industrial bleach. Eva Evans, 28 years old and running on fumes, wiped down the last counter. Her reflection in the stainless steel backsplash looked worn, the edges of her youth frayed by the graveyard shift and the constant, grinding math of survival. Rent was due Tuesday. Maddie's kindergarten tuition was already 3 days late. She pressed her phone between her shoulder and ear, balancing the receiver while sweeping crumbs into her hand. Brenda, I swear, I get paid Friday. I just need 2 more days. Please, don't tell them she can't come back. She listened, her face tight, her eyes scanning the empty booths. I know you are. Thank you. She hung up and leaned against the counter, the exhaustion hitting her like a physical blow. She opened her local news app. The headline jumped out, Evan Briggs. Released. Time served. Her stomach dropped. Her ex-husband, a small-time con artist whose charm had curdled into threats the moment she got pregnant. The article mentioned his known associations with aggressive local loan sharks. Trouble wasn't just coming back, it was out. The bell above the diner door chimed, sharp and sudden in the quiet. 5 men stepped inside, shaking the ocean from expensive-looking dark wool coats. They didn't stomp or laugh like the usual late-night crowd. They moved as a single unit, their presence sucking the air out of the room. They brought the cold in with them. Eva felt the shift instantly. It was not the rowdiness of drunks. It was the heavy silence of coordinated violence. Her hand instinctively tightened on the wet rag. The man in the lead was perhaps 38, maybe 40, Italian-American, with dark hair cut precisely, framing a face that was handsome but severe. He wore a minimalist dark vest over a crisp white shirt. No tie. He looked like he belonged in a boardroom. Not a greasy spoon at midnight. His eyes scanned the room, not looking at things, but through them. A booth, he said. His voice was a low, polite gravel. The corner, facing the parking lot, my back to the wall. Eva nodded, grabbing 5 menus she didn't need to wipe down. Coffee 5, he confirmed. Sliding into the vinyl seat, the other 4 men fanned out, taking the adjacent seats, effectively sealing him in. Eva went through the motions. She poured the thick, black coffee. She didn't recognize the man, Franco Villani. She didn't know he was the new capo of the Villani family, a man currently leveraging the Port Providence docks to move cryptocurrency as easily as he moved shipping containers. She just saw a customer who watched the rain-swept parking lot as if he were measuring firing angles. As she returned to take their order, a drunk regular, Ricky, stumbled from the men's room. He saw the table of suits and grinned, sensing an audience. Well, Ricky slurred, lurching toward them. Look at the big shots. You boys lost. The yacht club is 2 miles south. The man beside Franco tensed, his hand slightly shifting under his jacket. Eva saw the motion. She didn't want paperwork. She didn't want blood on the linoleum. She stepped directly into Ricky's path, her tray held like a shield. Ricky, you're done. Her voice was not kind, but it was not aggressive. It was the flat, non-negotiable tone of a mother. Your taxi is outside. Sarah's waiting. I was just talking to him. And now you're leaving, Eva said, pushing him lightly toward the door. Don't make me call Sarah. Go home, Ricky. Recognizing a wall he could not push through, grumbled and let himself be herded out. Eva turned back to the table, her composure absolute. Sorry about that. What can I get for you, gentlemen? Franco Villani looked at her. He had watched the entire exchange. She hadn't been scared. She hadn't been aggressive. She had used leverage Sarah to de-escalate without involving him. He recognized, the kind of person who could exist between predators and prey without getting eaten. Steak and eggs, all 5, Franco said. Rare. They ate in 10 minutes. The only sound, the scraping of knives on cheap porcelain. They paid the bill in cash and stood up. As they filed out, Franco paused by the register where Eva was ringing them up. He said nothing else. The bell jingled, and they were gone. Eva went to clear the table. The check was there, a $100 bill covering the $70 tab. Underneath the heavy coffee cup, however, was a stack. She picked it up. Her hands started to shake. They were hundreds. She fanned them quickly. She counted again. It was $5,000. It was a mistake. It had to be. This was rent, tuition, and groceries for 6 months. This was danger money. She grabbed the cash and ran out the door, the rain soaking her apron in seconds. "Wait, sir." The men were getting into a black, murdered-out SUV. The leader, Franco, paused. His door open. He looked at her, impatient. Eva ran up, breathless, holding the money out. "You left this. It's too much. It's $5,000. Franco looked at the wet cash in her hand, then back at her face. He saw her panic, her honesty, her defiance. He didn't smile. "Thanks for keeping things quiet," he said. He did not take the money. He got into the vehicle. The door shut with a heavy, final sound, and the SUV pulled out onto the wet street, its tinted windows revealing nothing. Eva stood in the downpour, clutching the money, feeling a confusing mix of relief and terror. She did not know that. Across the street, parked in a utility van shielded by the storm, 2 agents from the Bureau of Port Providence Integrity were watching. A camera with a high-powered lens zoomed in on her face as she spoke to Villani. "That's him," Agent Sloan said. "Who's the girl? Run her plates. Run her name." Eva Evans, single mother, had just been officially tied to the most dangerous man in the city. Eva slept for 3 hours, the stack of hundreds heavy in her purse like a brick. The morning sunlight felt accusing, too bright for the secrets she was carrying. She walked into the Port Providence Savings and Loan, her heart hammering against her ribs, feeling like a criminal. She approached the teller, a young woman with a polite, practiced smile. "This is going to sound strange," Eva said, her voice barely a whisper. She pulled the thick envelope from her purse, shielding it with her body. "Someone left this at my job last night. As a tip, it's $5,000. The teller's smile flickered. Her eyes widened. "My question is," Eva continued, leaning closer, "if I deposit this, does it look illegal? Like money laundering?" The teller looked around the quiet bank lobby. "Well, ma'am," she said, lowering her own voice, "by law, we only have to report cash transactions over $10,000. This is under that." She paused. "But if your account usually only gets paycheck deposits, and you suddenly deposit $5,000 in cash, yeah, it'll raise a flag in the system." "So what do I do?" Eva felt a wave of panic. "Honestly, if it was me, I wouldn't deposit it. Not all at once. Just use it. Cash. Landlords and preschools take cash." Eva nodded, a strange mix of relief and terror settling in her stomach. She slid the money back into her purse. It wasn't bank money. It was street money. It had different rules. She left the bank, the cash feeling heavier than before. She paid Brenda, the babysitter, in full, adding an extra $50 for the late fee, and picked up Maddie. The anxiety of the morning dissolved the instant a small, paint-smeared body crashed into her knees. "Mommy, we painted the big light today. The one you can see from the diner." Maddie, 5 years old, was a whirlwind of brown curls and chaotic energy. She was the only reason Eva endured the graveyard shift, the stale coffee, and the aching feet. This small, bright girl, obsessed with the sea and the local lighthouses, was the fixed point in her world. In their small, second-floor apartment, the walls were covered in crayon drawings of waves and towering lights. "Did you pay Miss Brenda?" "Mommy," Maddie asked, already digging for her drawing pad. Eva thought of the stack of cash now hidden in a shoebox under her bed. "Yes, honey, I paid her. Everything is all settled." The lie caught in her throat. Trouble was waiting for her in the parking lot when she went to take out the trash. Evan Briggs. He leaned against her beat-up sedan, his faded charm curdled by desperation. He was thinner than she remembered, his eyes darting. "Evie," he said, that old, practiced smile spreading across his face. "You look tired. What do you want?" "Evan." She held the trash bag in front of her like a shield. "Hey, I just need a little help, just to get back on my feet." He pushed off the car, taking a step toward her. "I need a couple thousand. These guys I owed. They're not nice people. Evie, they're not playing around." Her blood ran cold. He knew. How could he possibly know? "I don't have it. Evan, I'm late on rent as it is." "Don't lie to me." His smile vanished, replaced by the familiar, snake-like anger she remembered. "I know you're working. I heard you had a very good night. Get away from my car." He grabbed her arm. Not hard enough to leave a mark, but hard enough to control. "Don't be stupid, Eva. What happens if they start asking questions about that man at the diner last night? The one in the suit, because they already asked me." He had been followed, or worse. He had been approached. He was a magnet for the bottom feeders of the city. She ripped her arm free. "Go, or I swear I'll call the cops about the old protection order." He backed off, his hands raised in mock surrender. "Fine, be like that, but when they come looking for him, you're the one they're gonna find." He stormed off toward the street. Eva fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking so badly she dropped them twice before she could unlock her own front door. Across the harbor, in an office of smoked glass and reclaimed steel high above the Villani Import and Marine Building, Franco Villani watched a container ship being guided into port. "The Waitress," he said, not turning. Rico Sana, his oldest friend and most trusted advisor, stood by the desk. "The one at the diner. She has good reflexes." "You want her checked out?" Rico asked. "I want to know if she's clean. I want to know if she's talking to the feds or anyone else." Rico was back in an hour. Eva Evans, 28, one daughter, Madeline, 5 years old. Record is spotless. No criminal associations. He flipped a page in his file. Got a messy divorce finalized 2 years back. Ex-husband is Evan Briggs. Just got out of county lockup on a minor fraud charge. She had an order of protection against him in 2023. It's since expired. She's just what she looks like. Franco, a single mom working a bad shift. Franco was silent. He pictured her face in the rain, soaked and defiant, holding out $5,000 that could have solved all her problems. All because she wouldn't be bought. "She's not the type to be indebted," he murmured. It stirred something in him, an old memory he kept locked away. His wife, Kiara. She had that same look, that same inability to be bent. Kiara, who had died in a spray of gunfire 6 years ago, a hit meant for him that had caught her instead while she was picking up their son from school. That was the day he had sent his son to safety in Sicily and walled off the last soft part of himself. Meanwhile, in a windowless room in a downtown federal building, Agent Mariah Sloan and Agent Tyler Rusk watched the grainy footage from the diner's parking lot. "He stopped for her," Rusk said, leaning in. "He spoke to her. Villani doesn't speak to civilians." "She ran out to return the money," Sloan observed, hitting pause. "Look at his face. He's not angry. He's interested." "So what's the play? We can't get near him. He's insulated." "But she's not," Sloan said, pressing play. "She's a harmless point of contact. Let's go knock on her door. Let's see how she feels about cooperating." Eva was scrubbing the diner's coffee machine when they found her. 2 of them, a man and a woman, in boring gray suits that screamed government. They flashed badges. Bureau of Port Providence Integrity. "Miss Evans, we'd like to ask you a few questions about your interaction with Franco Villani." They sat in her living room later that day, their presence making the small apartment feel suffocating. Eva stuck to her story. He was just a customer. She didn't know his name. The tip was a mistake. They didn't push. Not yet. They just let her know they were watching. When they left, Eva locked the deadbolt and she was trapped, on one side, a desperate ex-husband who would sell her out for $20. On the other, federal agents who saw her as bait. And in the center, a quiet, dangerous man, a man who, she was sure, was capable of terrible things, but whose eyes held a strange, assessing gravity she found herself attracted to. Her phone vibrated on the counter. A number she didn't recognize. A single text message. It read, "Don't let anyone take the money I gave you. F." The call came the next morning. It wasn't Franco's gravelly voice. It was a smooth, professional man named Rico, Mr. Villani requested the pleasure of her company for lunch to thank her properly for her trouble at the diner. A car would be at her apartment complex at noon. Eva's first instinct was to refuse, to hide, to pretend the $5,000 and the threatening text message never happened. But Evan's desperate face and the chilling visit from the federal agents had squeezed her world into a very small space. She was already in trouble. Hiding would not make it go away. She had to go. She had to look this man in the eye and find out what he wanted. She told Brenda she had a last-minute appointment, needing her to watch Maddie for 2 hours. At noon on the dot, a black sedan, identical in its quiet menace to the SUV from that night, pulled up to her curb. The driver, the same man who had sat beside Franco at the diner, got out and opened the rear door for her without a word. The restaurant was called Il Corvo. It was tucked away on a forgotten cobblestone street near the oldest, most industrial part of the port. There was no sign, just a heavy, dark-painted wooden door. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of old wine, garlic, and something she couldn't place a faint, lingering trace of cigar smoke. It was dark. The windows tinted, the booths carved from heavy wood. It was also completely empty, save for them. Franco stood as she approached. He was in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, no tie. He looked less like a gangster and more like a high-powered CEO, the kind who dismantled companies for a living. Eva, in her best pair of jeans and a second-hand blouse she'd ironed twice, felt like a sparrow that had flown into a lion's den. "Miss Evans." "Eva, thank you for coming," he said, his voice as polite as she remembered. "I'm here because I need to know what's going on," she said, sliding into the booth. Her voice was steady, but her hands were clasped tight in her lap. A young waiter, visibly trembling, hurried over to pour them both water. As he reached for Ava's glass, his hand knocked the silver utensil beside it. The fork clattered onto the plate. Before Eva could even register the noise, Franco's voice changed. "Piano," he said. It was not loud, but the word landed with the force of a physical blow. The waiter froze, his face ashen. "Watch his hands," Franco said, his voice now flat, cold, and stripped of all courtesy. It was a pure command. "Si, signore, scusi." "Go," Franco ordered. The boy practically ran. Franco turned back to Eva, his expression smoothing instantly, as if a mask had been put back in place. "My apologies." She stared at him, the chill from his command still in the air. "Who are you?" "I'm a man who values good service." "Don't," she said, her patience snapping. "The feds came to my apartment. They asked about you. My ex-husband showed up, talking about men who were looking for you, and then you sent me that text." She leaned forward. "That $5,000. Was that to buy my silence, or was it to paint a target on my back?" He studied her, his dark eyes unblinking. "Neither," he said finally. "The money was for the drunk. You handled him. You didn't panic. You didn't call the police. And you didn't look scared." He took a sip of water. "In my world, that kind of composure under pressure is rare. It was appreciation. It's brought me nothing but trouble." "The trouble was already there," he said, his voice softening slightly. "The feds, the ex-husband, he tilted his head. You have a daughter, Maddie." Eva's blood ran cold. "How do you know that? You stay away from her." "My associate ran a background check after the diner. I had to know who I was dealing with." "I'm a waitress," she snapped. "That's all." "What's she like?" The simple question disarmed her. It wasn't an interrogation. It sounded like genuine curiosity. "She's 5, Eva said, her defensive posture crumbling just a little. "She's obsessed with lighthouses. She draws them on everything. She's bright and loud. She's all I have." A shadow crossed Franco's face, a deep, old pain that momentarily eclipsed the authority. "My wife, Chiara," he said, his voice dropping so low she had to lean in. She was killed 6 years ago. It was a mistake, a hit meant for me. She was picking up our son from school." He looked past Eva, toward the dark, tinted window. "My son lives in Sicily now, with her parents. It's safer. I live here in America, mostly alone." The confession hung between them, heavy and real. He wasn't just a monster. He was a widower. He understood loss. The heavy front door of the restaurant swung open, breaking the silence. 3 men entered, loud and flashy in designer tracksuits, their gold chains gleaming. They swaggered in, ignoring the nervous proprietor who tried to stop them. They were from the rival Civetta crew. "Franco." The leader smirked, his eyes raking over Eva. "Tasting the local flavor bad for digestion." Franco placed his napkin neatly on the table. "Excuse me for one moment." He slid out of the booth. He didn't walk around them. He walked directly at them, forcing the leader to take an involuntary step back. Franco didn't raise his voice. He didn't reach for a weapon. He simply spoke, his voice a low, rapid torrent of Italian. Eva watched, mesmerized. The smirking man's face went from arrogant to pale. He tried to interrupt, but Franco cut him off with a look so cold, so full of controlled violence, that the man physically recoiled. It lasted maybe 30 seconds. Then, the 3 men, defeated without a single hand being laid on them, turned and walked out. Franco returned to the booth, adjusting the cuff of his shirt. "Business associates," he said, as if nothing had happened. "They are often rude." Eva's heart was pounding. She finally understood. Agent Sloan wasn't exaggerating. This man's power was absolute. He was more dangerous than a man with a gun. He was the gun. He paid the bill, and they left, in the alley. As he walked her to the waiting sedan, it happened. A man in a hoodie bolted from between 2 dumpsters, lunging straight for Eva, his hand outstretched to grab her purse. Eva only had time to gasp. Franco moved with a speed that defied his size. He didn't push her out of the way. He pulled her in. One arm clamped around her waist like a steel vice, yanking her off her feet and spinning her behind him, using his own body as a shield. His other hand vanished inside his suit jacket. The attacker, now face to face with Franco Villani, froze. Terror washed over his features. He didn't just stop. He fell backward, scrambling away. I didn't know." He crab-walked backward and then sprinted down the alley. It was over in 2 seconds, but Eva was still crushed against Franco's chest. Her hands were splayed against the fine wool of his suit, feeling the hard muscle beneath. She could feel the solid thump of his heart, or maybe it was her own. He smelled of expensive soap, starch, and something metallic, like cold air. His arm was still locked around her. She tilted her head back to look at him. His face was inches from hers. His eyes, so cold moments before, were now dark and fixed on her mouth. The air between them crackled, charged with adrenaline and something else. She saw his gaze flicker. She felt his warm breath on her cheek. In that moment, pressed against this dangerous man, she felt safer than she had in years. He held her for 1 beat longer, then another finally. He loosened his grip, though he didn't release her completely. "From now on," he said, his voice low and rough, "when you work the night shift, you call my driver. He will take you. He will wait." "I can't. This is not a negotiation," he said, cutting her off. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, thin burner phone. "This is clean. It has 1 number in it. You use it." He pressed it into her hand. "Don't let anyone else touch your business, Eva." He said her name like it was an intimate thing. She took the phone. When she got back to her apartment, Agent Mariah Sloan was leaning against her car. "We saw you," Sloan said, her eyes hard. "Lunch with the boss. He gave you a gift. You're in deep. Eva, you need to pick a side. We just talked. He protected me." Sloan let out a short, bitter laugh. "Men like that don't just leave money, Eva. They leave bodies." Evan Briggs was drowning. The loan sharks he owed money to were not small time. They measured interest in broken fingers, desperate and hunted. He remembered the name his ex-wife's federal visitors had mentioned Civetta. He made a call to a low-level bookie he knew had connections. "I don't know much," Evan said. his voice slick with sweat, speaking into a payphone at a truck stop. "But that Italian boss you guys are looking for, the one from the Port Villani, he was at my ex-wife's diner. The Harbor Light gave her a mountain of cash. They had lunch yesterday, too." The bookie hung up. The information traveled up the chain to the Civetta crew. This was a gift. Franco Villani had a notorious firewall. He had no mistresses, no drug habits, no gambling debts, but a waitress, a single mother. That was a weak link. That was a lever. They decided to watch the woman and the child to see which one was easier to snatch. The Bureau of Port Providence integrity was not sloppy. They had a flag on Evan Briggs's name, and the call from the truck stop pinged their system. Agent Sloan and Agent Rusk were back at Eva's apartment within hours. This time, they were not polite. "Your ex-husband just sold you out to the Civetta crew," Sloan stated flatly, dropping a photo of the bookie on Eva's coffee table. I haven't talked to him," Eva stammered. "It doesn't matter," Russ cut in. "You are now a person of interest to two rival organizations, and you're an accessory to Villani. You're compromised. Eva, I haven't done anything. You took his money. You took his car service. You took his phone," Sloan said, her voice sharp. "You're drowning, and we're the only lifeboat." She placed a small, metallic object on the table, a digital audio recorder. "We need you to accept his protection. Let him believe you're on his side. Let him talk." "No," Eva said, standing up. "I won't. You're asking me to be bait." Sloan's eyes went dead. "If you don't cooperate, we will be forced to open an investigation into your ability to provide a safe environment for your daughter, a mother who is willingly associating with the head of an organized crime family. I see here, Maddie was in the emergency room twice last year for severe asthma. It's a stressful environment. Wouldn't you say it would be a shame if Child Protective Services had to get involved?" The threat landed, sucking all the air from Eva's lungs. Her daughter. They were threatening to take her daughter. She was trapped. If she refused, she lost Maddie. If she accepted, she was betraying the one man who had, in his own dangerous way, protected her. Her burner phone rang, the one Franco had given her. It was Rico. "Mr. Villani needs you to come to the main office. There is a contract to sign for your consultancy." "Consultancy?" "He'll explain. The car is downstairs." Eva looked at Sloan. The agent nodded, her eyes like chips of ice. Eva picked up the recorder and put it in her pocket. "I'll be there in 5 minutes." Villani Import and Marine was not just an office, it was an empire. The car cleared 3 security checkpoints before pulling up to a renovated warehouse. The inside was a cavernous, glass-walled hub of activity. Men in suits spoke Italian, Spanish, and Russian into phones. Screens showed global shipping lanes, cryptocurrency tickers, and security feeds from a dozen different docks. This was the machine. And Franco Villani sat at its absolute center, in a glass office overlooking the entire operation. "It's a retainer," he said, pushing a document across his massive desk. "For customer service consultation, $10,000. It formalizes the money I gave you. It makes it clean. It makes you an employee. My employee." "And what do my duties involve?" she asked, her hand trembling as it hovered over the pen. In her pocket, the recorder felt like a block of ice. "They involve you staying safe," he said, his eyes meeting hers, "and letting me handle the people who are asking your ex-husband questions." Before she could answer, a sharp crack echoed across the port, followed by the high-pitched shriek of ricocheting metal. A 2-inch hole appeared in the glass wall of the office, 5 feet from Franco's head. Outside, men shouted, alarms blared. Franco didn't flinch. He moved, in one fluid motion. He was around the desk, grabbing Eva by the arm. "Now!" He didn't run for the exit. He pulled her toward a solid steel door in the corner of his office. Shoving it open, it was a deep supply closet, reinforced, windowless. He threw her inside, followed, and slammed the heavy door shut. Twisting the deadbolt, they were plunged into darkness, broken only by the thin line of light under the door. The space was tiny. They were chest to chest, his body pressing her against a shelf of office supplies, the smell of cedar. sea salt from the air, and his skin filled her lungs. Outside, she heard running feet, another shot, this one muffled by the thick door. Eva started to shake. The reality of it, the bullet, the feds, the trap crashed over her. "Oh, God," she whispered, her breath hitching. "Maddie, she's at school. What if they go for her? She's at school." "They won't," Franco said, his voice, a low rumble in the dark, vibrated through her. "You don't know that," she gasped, her hands coming up to push against his chest. But there was nowhere to go. "This is insane. I have to get to her. Eva." He covered her hands with his. His palms were warm and calloused, shockingly steady. "Look at me." She couldn't see him, not really, just the outline of his shoulders. She was hyperventilating. "Breathe," he commanded. He didn't let go of her hands. Instead, he moved one large hand from her wrist to the back of her neck, his fingers tangling in her hair, his thumb finding the pulse fluttering there. "Breathe with me. In." He took a slow, deep breath. She felt his chest expand against hers. She was forced to follow. Out. His hand was a solid, warm anchor in the terrifying dark. He didn't caress her. He just held her, grounding her. "She's safe. I already had Rico put 2 men at her school this morning. They've been there since 9 a.m. She froze. "You what?" "Your ex-husband talked. I assumed they would look. I don't let people touch children." The alarms outside quieted. They heard Rico's voice call his name. Franco unlocked the door. The bright office light was blinding. "Sniper," Rico said, holding up a small, spent cartridge. "Civetta. Just a warning shot. He's gone." Franco didn't look at Rico. He looked at Ava. "We're moving you. Both of you." An hour later, Eva was standing in the doorway of a stunning, high-security apartment in the West Dock residences. Rico had picked up Maddie from school. "Mommy, this place is like a castle. Look, you can see all the boats." Maddie was already at the floor-to-ceiling windows, crayons in hand. Franco knelt beside her. Eva watched, her heart in her throat, as this man, who had just been shot at, spoke to her daughter. "You like the lighthouses, huh?" he asked, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "Yeah, they stop the ships from crashing." "That's right," he said. "In my country. In Italy. We have lighthouses that are thousands of years old. They're made of white stone." He pulled a set of expensive-looking drawing pens from his suit pocket. "You can't draw a lighthouse without a good red for the rose bushes." Maddie beamed and took the pens. Eva saw the father in him, the man who had lost his own wife, who kept his own son an ocean away. This was the man the feds wanted her to betray. As Franco stood, Rico pulled him aside into the hallway. Eva could hear their low whispers. "Bringing them here. Capo," Rico warned. "Into one of our secure locations. You're attaching them to the family. To you, there's no going back from this." Franco looked over Rico's shoulder, his gaze landing on Eva, who stood frozen, watching her daughter draw with a Mafia boss. "We've been attached," Franco said, his voice flat and final, "since she ran out into that parking lot to give me back the money." Maddie was asleep, her soft breaths the only sound in the secure, sterile apartment. Outside, the rain had returned to Port Providence, a steady, whispering curtain that blurred the city lights into a soft, impressionistic smear. Eva stood on the balcony, the chill of the night air seeping through her thin sweater. It was the first time she'd been able to breathe in days, high above the streets where Evan and the feds were hunting. The glass door slid open behind her. Franco. And he had taken off his suit jacket, his sleeves rolled to his forearms, revealing strong, capable hands. He was holding 2 glasses of deep red wine. He offered one to her, his fingers brushing hers as she took it. The contact sent a small jolt of warmth through her skin. "It's cold out here," he said. His voice was quiet, a low rumble that seemed to merge with the sound of the rain. "I don't mind," she replied, not looking at him, watching the distant lights of the port. "It feels clean." They stood in silence, an ocean of unspoken words between them. "You chose the wrong man," he said finally. "It wasn't an accusation, just a flat statement of fact." Eva let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Evan, I was 19. I thought his recklessness was passion. I thought I could save him. She took a sip of the wine. It was complex and strong, and it warmed her from the inside. I chose badly. It almost cost me everything. She turned to look at him, his profile sharp against the glowing city. So did you. He didn't deny it. He swirled the dark liquid in his glass. My father left me this life. I chose to avenge him instead of walking away. I thought it was honor. He paused, his gaze distant, lost in a memory she couldn't see. It cost me Kiara. It cost me my son. We're both very good at making bad choices. The parallel settled between them. Her mistake had been small and pathetic. His was vast and violent, but the resulting emptiness felt hauntingly similar. I knew you were different, though, he said, turning to face her, from the first night. How, at the diner, before the drunk caused trouble. I was watching you. You cleared a table, and you thought no one was looking. He leaned against the railing. You wrapped a piece of leftover toast and 2 slices of bacon in a napkin and put it in your pocket. You were saving scraps to take home. Ava felt a flush of shame creep up her neck. You were taking it home for Maddie, he said, his voice soft. A woman who does that, who humbles herself for her child. She doesn't sell her integrity easily. I knew then you'd run out into the rain to try and return the money. His words undid her. He hadn't just seen a waitress. He had seen a mother. He had seen her. The weight of the tiny recorder, still hidden in the pocket of her jeans, suddenly felt like a block of lead. Franco, she whispered, her voice thick. I have to tell you something. Those agents, the BPPI, they came to me again, after the dock. His body did not change, but the air around him went Arctic. He became perfectly, dangerously still. They want me to inform on you. They threatened me. They gave me this. She couldn't bring herself to pull it out. A recorder. He didn't ask if she had used it. He didn't ask what she had told them. His eyes, flat and black, bored into hers. He asked the only question that mattered. Did they threaten your child? She couldn't speak. The memory of Sloane's cold voice mentioning Maddie's asthma, mentioning Child Protective Services, made her stomach clench. A single, hot tear spilled over and ran down her cheek. She nodded. Franco turned away from her, his hands gripping the iron railing of the balcony. He stared down at the wet city below. He was silent for a full minute, but it was not a peaceful silence. It was the silence of a pressure valve about to burst, a terrible, contained rage that vibrated in the air. Eva could feel the fury rolling off him in waves. When he finally turned back, the anger was gone, banked like a fire, replaced by something else, something raw and exposed. He stepped toward her. She was penned in, her back against the railing, the city lights a dizzying blur behind her. They won't touch her again, he said. It was not a reassurance. It was a sentence passed. He raised his hand, and for a terrifying second, she thought he might strike her. Instead, his touch was impossibly gentle. His thumb, calloused from things she did not want to imagine, brushed the wet track of her tear away. His fingers traced the line of her jaw, then settled on her chin, tilting her face up to his. His dark eyes searched hers, asking a question she was too afraid to answer. Then, his gaze dropped to her mouth. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird in a cage. She knew she should be afraid. This was the man the government was hunting. This was the man who had ordered men to watch her daughter. But as he looked at her, she felt only a profound, magnetic pull. She did not pull away. She did not even breathe. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to escape. When she didn't, his lips met hers. The kiss was hesitant at first, a slow, deep exploration. It tasted of wine and the night air, and it was devastatingly tender. A jolt went through her, a warmth that had nothing to do with the wine. It spread from her mouth, down her throat and into her chest, where her heart seemed to stumble. She let out a small, shuddering sigh, and her hands came up to grip the front of his shirt, fisting the material. The sound broke his control. His other hand snaked around her, palm flat against her upper back, pulling her tightly against him. He deepened the kiss, and it was no longer hesitant. It was a kiss of shared loss, of adrenaline, of two people who had been alone for too long. She felt the solid, steady beat of his heart against her own frantic rhythm. The sound of the rain, the distant city, all of it faded away. There was only the warmth of his mouth and the solid, safe circle of his arms. They finally broke apart, breathless, their foreheads resting together. Eva's eyes were closed, her body trembling. He just held her, his warm breath fanning her cheek. "When this is clean," he whispered, his voice rough with an emotion she had never heard from him. "When there are no more shadows, I will kiss you again, without having to look over my shoulder." He was promising her a future. He was giving her a choice. Eva opened her eyes. She knew, in that instant, that she had already chosen. She would throw the recorder in the river. She would lie to the feds. She was on his side. "Mommy!" The small voice shattered the night. They sprang apart, though Franco's hand remained on her elbow, steadying her. Maddie stood in the glass doorway, her hair a mess of sleep-tousled curls, rubbing her eyes. She hadn't seen the kiss, only the aftermath. "Hey, baby," Eva said, her voice shaky. "Bad dream." Maddie padded onto the balcony, her eyes moving from her mother to Franco. A slow, sleepy smile lit her face. "No, you were smiling. Mommy." Eva looked at Franco. A small, almost imperceptible smile was touching the corner of his mouth. "Go back to bed," Piccoline, Franco said, his voice gentle. "Your mother will be right in." As Maddie padded back to her room, the spell broke. The reality of their situation rushed back in. Franco walked back to the edge of the balcony, his back to her. He slid his hand under his shirt, to the small of his back, his fingers finding the comforting, cold steel of his holstered weapon. He stared down at the dark, sprawling port, his port. He knew his enemies were not sleeping. The Civetta crew were merely dogs. The hand that held their leash belonged to Orlando Lark Caravelli, from his sterile, top-floor office of chrome and white marble. Orlando watched the same harbor as Franco Villani, but he saw it in data, decades ago. He had been Franco's father's most trusted financial advisor. He had been the one to advise the old man on how to legitimize their shipping interests. When the father died, Orlando had expected to guide the son. Instead, Franco had exiled him, preferring Rico Sana's old-world loyalty to Orlando's cold, modern efficiency. Now, Orlando had new allies, an Eastern European syndicate that saw the Villani network not as a family, but as an unsecured server. He'd been watching Franco, waiting for a crack in the fortress. Franco was disciplined, no mistresses, no vices. He was a ghost. Then, a waitress ran out into the rain holding $5,000. Orlando studied the surveillance photo of Eva and Maddie entering the West Dock residences. He builds a wall around his heart by sending his son to Sicily, Orlando mused, tapping the photo. And then he hands a stranger the key. He knew Franco. This wasn't just protection. This was an investment. Franco was building a small, fragile happiness. And happiness, Orlando knew, was the perfect lever. He didn't need a professional to get inside. He just needed someone pathetic. Evan Briggs was trying to buy a bus ticket with pocket change when they found him. They brought him to Orlando, who was not threatening. He was kind, almost fatherly. "Mr. Briggs," Orlando said, offering him a seat, "you're a man who loves his daughter. I understand that." "Who are you?" Evan stammered. "A friend, someone who is also worried about that child. This man, Villani, he's not a good person. I just want to make sure your daughter is safe." Orlando slid a small, black square across the desk, a high-end audio bug. "This is just a listening device, so you can hear for yourself that she's okay." I can't get in there," Evan said. "You're her father. You're trying to deliver a gift." Orlando pushed an envelope thick with cash toward him. $10,000, just to make sure she's safe. Evan saw the money. He saw his escape. He told himself it was just for Maddie. He had no idea he was a pawn, selling access to the most powerful man on the coast. He posed as a delivery driver. He didn't even make it past the lobby, but it was enough. He managed to slip the magnetic device onto the underside of the service elevator's metal frame. Rico Sana found the anomaly within 3 hours. He was sweeping the building for electronic signatures and found a tiny, unlogged Bluetooth pulse. He checked the lobby cameras for that time frame. He saw the delivery man's face, partially obscured by a cap. He ran it through facial recognition. Evan Briggs. They found him at the bus station, the cash still in his jacket. They brought him to the safe house. Eva was making Maddie dinner when Rico entered, pushing a terrified Evan in front of him. "Evan, what are you—" Eva started. "In the study?" Franco said from the doorway. He was holding the small black bug between his thumb and forefinger. "Franco, don't," Eva pleaded, following them. He's just pathetic." "Stay," Franco commanded, his voice quiet. "I want you to watch this." They forced Evan into a leather chair. Franco didn't circle him. He didn't raise his voice. He just stood in front of him, radiating a terrible, disappointed calm. "Who do you work for?" "Nobody." "I swear it was a nanny cam. I just wanted to hear my little girl." Evan was sweating, his eyes darting to Eva. "Tell him. Evie, I'd never hurt Maddie." Franco sighed. "You didn't just bug your daughter. Evan, you put a microphone in my home. The men who hired you don't care about your daughter. They are the same men who sent a sniper to my office while Eva was in it." The blood drained from Evan's face. "Oh, God, I didn't know. You put a target on your own child." Franco let the words hang in the air. He opened a desk drawer and removed an envelope. "You have 2 choices. This is $20,000, enough to disappear. You will take it, and Rico will drive you to the train station. You will go west, California, Arizona. I don't care. You will never call Eva again. You will never write. You will cease to exist. This is your only chance to start over." "And the other choice," Evan whispered, his body trembling. "The other choice," Franco said, his voice flat, "is I give you back to the man who hired you, and I tell him you failed." Evan understood the death sentence. He grabbed the envelope. "I'll go. I swear I'll go." After Rico had dragged him out, Eva stared at Franco. She was horrified, but also terribly relieved. "He's gone." "Yes. You paid him. After what he did, you let him go." Franco turned, his dark eyes meeting hers. "I will not hurt your child's father. I will not be the man who orphans her. But," he continued, his voice hardening, "I will also not allow anyone to open my door from the inside. He's a weak man, and weak men are the most dangerous. He's gone from your life now, for good." The fragile peace lasted less than a day. The BPPI was tightening its net. Eva met Agent Sloan in a coffee shop, the agent's fury barely concealed. "We picked up Briggs at the train station," Sloan hissed, dropping a file on the table. "He told us everything, the bug, the safe house. You're not just cooperating with him, you're living with him. You've chosen your side. You don't understand." "I understand that you have one last chance," Sloan said. She slid a USB stick across the table. "That's an application, a location tracker. You will install it on the burner phone he gave you. We're done with audio. We want his money. We want his digital trail. You do this, or the CPS file on your desk goes active at 9 a.m. tomorrow." Eva was trapped. She would be betraying the man who had just shown a strange, controlled mercy to her ex-husband. But if she didn't, she would lose Maddie. The decision was taken from her hands. Rico insisted they move again. The bug meant the West Dock was compromised. They were in the back of a secure transport van, a windowless box moving through the city. When Maddie started coughing, it wasn't a normal cough. It was a tight, dry bark that stole her breath. "Her inhaler," Eva said, digging through her purse. "It's here. It's—" The cough turned into a high-pitched, desperate wheeze. Maddie's face went pale, her lips tinged with blue. She wasn't getting air. "She can't breathe," Eva screamed. "Rico, hospital now," Franco yelled from the front. "Protocols, capo," Rico said, his eyes scanning the mirrors. "The secure clinic is 12 minutes out." "She doesn't have 12 minutes. Franco looked back, seeing the pure terror in Eva's eyes and the silent panic on Maddie's face. He made a decision. He was no longer a boss. He was a father. Pull over, stop the car. Capo. Stop. Franco threw open the door, grabbed Eva's arm and pulled her and the gasping child into the black sedan that was following them. He got behind the wheel himself, shoving his driver into the passenger seat. St. Aurelia Medical Center. It's 6 blocks from here. Franco, that's a civilian hospital. It's wide open, his driver protested. Franco ignored him. He hit a switch under the dash, and a loud, piercing European siren, illegal and jarring, cut through the traffic. He floored the accelerator, mounting the curb to bypass a truck. He was breaking every rule. 5 minutes later, he burst through the emergency room doors of St. Aurelia, carrying Maddie in his arms, in his office. Orlando Caravelli's phone buzzed. It was a text from the hospital administrator he had on his payroll. Villani just arrived. ER. With the woman and the child, he looks exposed. Orlando smiled. He looked at the ping on his map. The fortress had left its walls. He's emotional. He's vulnerable. Orlando said to his men, "Start tonight." Maddie was stable. The emergency nebulizer treatment at St. Aurelia Medical Center had calmed the inflammation in her lungs, but the attending physician was firm. Her system is stressed. The doctor, a calm woman who hadn't asked a single question about the illegal siren or the man radiating authority, advised Franco, "Moving her again, especially in this damp coastal air, is a risk. She needs to be in a stable, warm environment for at least a few days. No more shocks." Franco nodded. The decision was already made. The West Dock apartment was burned. The hospital was now a liability. "We're not going back," Franco said to Eva, his voice low as he watched Maddie sleep in the recovery room. "I have a place. It's quiet, far from the port. It's the only place they don't know about." The place was called Mariner's Bluff. It was 30 minutes north of Port Providence, a sheer cliff overlooking the roaring Atlantic. The house was not a concrete fortress. It was a stunning, modern design of glass, steel, and warm cedar built into the rock, invisible from the single-lane access road. It was a house built to watch the ocean, not to hide from it. When they walked in, a fire was already crackling in a massive, floor-to-ceiling stone fireplace. The house smelled of wood smoke and sea salt. Maddie, sleepy from the medicine and wrapped in Franco's jacket, looked around in awe. "Mommy," she whispered, pointing to the wall of glass that looked out over the black, churning water. "It's like we're in the lighthouse." Eva felt her throat tighten, with its soft rugs, deep, comfortable sofas, and the constant rhythmic sound of the surf below. This felt more like a home than her cramped, bleach-scented apartment ever had. It was the first real home she had felt safe in since before her marriage. Later that night, after Rico had settled Maddie into a warm bedroom and posted 3 guards at the unseen perimeter, Eva found Franco by the fire. He had removed his jacket and was staring into the flames, a glass of whiskey in his hand. She stood beside him, watching the fire dance. "You said you lost your wife," Eva said, her voice soft. "This was her house, wasn't it?" He nodded, not looking at her. "Chiara, she designed it. She said the ocean was the only thing big enough to eat all the bad memories. She was wrong." He took a drink. A long silence stretched, filled only by the wind and the crackle of the logs. "Why did you stay?" she asked. "In this life, after she was killed?" He finally turned, his dark eyes reflecting the orange light. "My father was murdered by men he trusted. They called it a business dispute. I was 22. I had a choice. Take the inheritance and go to law school, or take his name and get justice." "You chose revenge," she whispered. "I chose to become the boss," he corrected, though they both knew it was the same thing. "I tore their world apart to avenge him, and in the end, it took mine too." Eva looked down at her own hands, twisting them in her lap. "I chose Evan because I was naive. I thought I could fix him. I thought his recklessness was passion. I almost lost Maddie in the custody battle because the judge saw him for exactly what he was." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "2 different wounds, I guess, but they scar just the same." He stepped closer. The air between them, already charged by the adrenaline of the sniper attack and the panic at the hospital, now crackled with this raw, dangerous honesty. "You're nothing like him, Eva," he said, his voice rough. "You're not weak." "Neither are you," she replied, her breath catching in her throat. The attraction that had sparked on the balcony, that had been simmering under every interaction, finally detonated. This time, she was the one who moved first. She raised her hands, not in fear, but in a clear, conscious choice. She looped her arms around his neck, her fingers tangling in the thick, dark hair at his nape. It was all the invitation he needed. His mouth came down on hers, not gently this time, but with a raw, desperate hunger that mirrored her own. It was a kiss of shared loss, of survival. He tasted of smoke and expensive whiskey. She responded with equal force, rising on her toes, pressing her body against his, trying to erase the last inches between them. A low groan rumbled in his chest. His hands gripped her waist, his fingers digging into the soft fabric of her sweater, and he lifted her off her feet. Eva's legs wrapped around his waist instinctively. He didn't break the kiss, but moved, placing her on the heavy oak table beside the fireplace, his body pressing between her knees. He pulled back just enough to breathe, his forehead resting against hers, his eyes closed. "Eva!" he rasped, the name a prayer and a curse. She didn't want him to talk. She wanted, for 1 minute, not to be a victim, not to be a pawn. She pulled his face back to hers. The kiss became a flurry of sensation. His lips moved from her mouth to her jaw, to the sensitive, fluttering pulse in her throat. She arched her back, her hands pulling his shirt taut, feeling the solid, hot wall of his chest. His hands were moving, tracing the curve of her side, the swell of her hip, his palms flat, the touch possessive. He wasn't touching her skin, but the heat of his hands seemed to burn right through the cloth. He murmured something against her throat, low and guttural, in Italian, words she did not understand but whose meaning was perfectly, achingly clear. "Amara mia, ti voglio, my love, I want you." The heat was overwhelming, a promise of a fire far hotter than the one in the hearth. He shifted, lifting her again, moving them from the hard table to the plush, deep sofa, falling with her. His body covering hers in a protective, possessive weight, a sharp, digital chime cut through the air. Franco froze. It was his security tablet on the mantel. He rolled off her in an instant, his transformation immediate and terrifying. The lover was gone. The capo was back. He snatched the tablet from the mantel, his breathing still harsh. "What is it?" Eva asked, sitting up, her body humming, her lips swollen. He didn't answer. He was staring at the screen. "Rico," he snapped. The door to the study opened instantly. Rico was there, his own gun already in his hand. "Unregistered van," Franco said, his voice pure ice. "It's circling the access road. No plates. 2 men inside." He pulled Eva up, shoving her toward the back of the room. "Get Maddie. Go to the cellar, now." Rico moved to the edge of the glass wall, peering into the darkness. "They're not approaching. Boss?" "They're just sitting." As Franco was grabbing his own weapon from a hidden drawer, his personal phone, the one he never used, buzzed on the table. A text message from an unknown number. He opened it. It was a video file. He pressed play. It was Maddie, not now, but hours ago, at St. Aurelia Hospital. It was shaky, grainy footage taken from across the emergency room, showing her small, pale face as Franco carried her through the doors. Then, a new message appeared below the video. "Beautiful girl. Looks like her mother. Watch the tide." Franco looked at Eva, his face a mask of cold, controlled fury. "Orlando," he said. "How?" Eva whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "How did he get that?" "He has a source," Franco said, his mind racing, connecting the dots. "Someone in the hospital. Or someone in the BPPI. Someone who knew we were there." He knew they could not run. Orlando was not just attacking. He was showing off. He was proving he could reach them anywhere. "He will never stop," Eva said, the realization dawning, the passionate haze evaporating, replaced by a cold dread. "As long as we are running, he will hunt us. He will hunt her." Franco looked at her. He saw the shift. The fear was gone. replaced by a mother's hard, unbending resolve. "No more running," Franco said. "To kill a snake, you cut off the head." He picked up his phone. "What are you doing?" "I'm calling Agent Sloan. I'm going to make a deal. We're going to burn it all down. Orlando, his network, and all my father's old business." "You'll go to prison," she whispered, horrified. "I'll make a deal, on my terms, to keep you and Maddie safe, permanently." He moved them to the panic room, a reinforced steel box hidden behind a bookshelf in the study. The three of them, Franco, Ava, and a sleeping Maddie, were enclosed in the small, soundproof space. Ava leaned against Franco's chest. She could still feel the warmth of his skin through his shirt, the fading, electric memory of his kiss. But her eyes, staring at the blank steel door, were hard. She was no longer just a waitress. She was a woman who had chosen her side. She would do whatever it took. Franco used the burner phone he had given Eva, the one Agent Sloan believed was her point of leverage, and dialed the number the agent had provided. Sloan answered on the first ring. Her voice clipped. "All business. Eva, did you install the tracking app?" "This isn't Eva." Franco's voice hit the line, a cold weight of authority that stopped her breath. "You said you wanted to talk to the adults. Agent Sloan, you're tired of dealing with the waitstaff. I'm here." A beat of absolute silence on the line. He could hear her calculating, the shock warring with her ambition. "Where?" "The container yard. Berth 4. 30 minutes. His voice was flat. "You come alone, or the deal is off the table, and your mole stays buried." He hung up before she could reply. The meeting took place in a canyon of rusting red shipping containers, the air thick with the smell of diesel and salt. Sloan stood alone, her hands visible, her face pale in the harsh glare of the port lights. Franco stepped out from the shadow of a 40-foot container. Rico remained invisible, a ghost in the darkness. "You're a hard man to find, Villani." "And you're sloppy," Franco countered, his voice quiet but carrying. "You threatened a civilian. You threatened a child. You broke your own rules first. Save the ethics lecture. Why am I here?" "A deal," Franco said. "You want Orlando Caravelli. He's the one who took a shot at my office. He's the one who sent the video from the hospital. And he's the one who bought your man." Sloane's eyes narrowed to slits. "What man?" "The one who told Orlando I was at St. Aurelia Medical Center not 2 hours ago." "You didn't know your organization is leaking, Agent, badly." That hit her. He could see the anger and the doubt warring on her face. "What's the deal?" "I give you Orlando. I give you the man on his payroll inside the BPPI. And I give you my father's ledgers. 3 years of Villani shipping manifests, the old business, enough to shut down the past and make you a hero." Sloan was stunned. This was not just a case. This was a career. And in exchange, Eva Evans, her name is erased. She's a cooperating witness who was threatened into silence. She gets full immunity, and her name is never mentioned in a single report. She and her daughter disappear from your files, completely. Sloan processed the political victory. She could destroy the Civetta crew, the rising Orlando syndicate, and dismantle the old Villani Guard. All in one move. How? Orlando is calling a peace talk. He thinks he has me cornered. He wants to negotiate my surrender. You wire the meeting. You take him, his crew, and my ledgers, and you leave Eva out of it. I'll be there. Sloan agreed. We'll wire the entire pier. When Franco returned to the glass house at Mariner's Bluff, Eva was waiting by the fireplace. She had taken the tiny audio recorder Sloan had given her, thrown it into the flames, and watched the plastic warp and melt. What did she say? "She agreed," Franco said, pouring himself a whiskey. He looked at her, the firelight catching the resolve in her eyes. "Eva, you have to understand. We're burning all the bridges. If this works, my father's organization is finished, but so is Orlando. When it's over, you can't go back. Not to the diner, not to that apartment." Eva walked to the window, looking out at the black, violent ocean. "I've been scrubbing grease off counters for 10 years. Terrified that a $20 emergency would make me homeless. I've been hiding from a weak man who thought he owned me." She turned back to Franco, her voice steady. I don't want to go back to that little apartment that smells like bleach and fear. That life was never mine. The trap was set, but Orlando had one more card to play. Evan Briggs hadn't made it to the train. Orlando's men had picked him up, terrified and clutching his envelope of $20,000. Now, he was in a cold warehouse, staring at Orlando. "You failed, Evan," Orlando said, his voice laced with false pity. "But I'm going to give you one last chance to do right by your daughter." Eva's phone buzzed. She looked at Franco. It was a text. From Evan. "Evie, please, I'm sorry, I have the papers. The real ones. The ones that sign my rights away to Maddie forever. I want you to have them. I'm at the old fishing pier. Berth 9. Please. Just come get them so I can go." Eva's stomach clenched. The custody papers, the one thing that offered her permanent, legal freedom. "It's Evan. He wants to give me the custody papers." She looked at Franco, her eyes desperate. "It could be real. Franco, if I have those." Franco took the phone from her hand. He looked at the message, then examined the metadata. The signal was masked. "He's not holding the phone. Eva, Orlando is... It's a trap." Her hope died, replaced by a cold anger. "Yes," Franco said, a slow, dangerous smile touching his lips. "It's a trap, and Orlando thinks you're desperate enough to walk right into it. So what do? We use it," Franco said. "He wants you at the pier. He'll get you, but on my terms." For Orlando, this was the end game. It wasn't just about the shipping lanes or the cryptocurrency. It was about theater. He needed to show the underworld, the old families, and his new Eastern European partners that Franco Villani was weak. And the ultimate proof was to take the one thing the new capo had allowed himself to care about. He wanted to capture Eva, to prove that he could reach into Franco's heart and rip it out. Simultaneously, in the BPPI offices, Agent Sloan was organizing the tactical team. "I want audio, video, and 3 sniper teams covering Berth 9, she ordered. Her second-in-command, Agent Tyler Rusk, nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I'll handle the deployment myself." As Sloan left, Rusk made a call to a private number. "She bought it. Villani is handing over the keys to the kingdom. But the op has changed. Sloan wants a full team. We can't let that happen." "No," Orlando's voice replied. "You will make sure that tactical team gets lost. A flat tire, a bad address. I want Sloan there, but I want her alone and undergunned. I'll handle Villani. You just keep the cavalry away." Rusk hung up. The double cross was in motion. Back at the house, Eva was with Maddie. Franco stood on the balcony with Rico, the salt spray cold on their faces. "He'll have men on the cranes," Rico said, scanning the darkness. "He'll have men in the water. This is his home turf." "Which is why Eva is the only one he'll be looking for," Franco said. He handed Rico a satellite phone and a set of keys. "The boat at the marina. It's fueled. The charts are programmed for the river, all the way to the Canadian border." Rico looked at his boss. "Capo, listen to me. Rico, if this goes wrong, if I give the signal, or if you don't hear from me in 1 hour, you get them. You get Eva and you get the child, and you do not stop until you are in Quebec. You do not look back. Capisci?" It was the closest Franco had ever come to admitting he might fail. He was preparing to die. "I understand," Rico said, his voice thick. "The port of Port Providence at night, Berth 9. It was a forgotten part of the docks, a graveyard of forgotten equipment. Dozens of shipping containers were stacked like a maze, creating dark alleys and dead ends. A single, weak, yellow security light flickered, casting long, nervous shadows. The wind whistled through the metal, sounding almost like a scream. The tide was coming in. 3 factions were now moving toward this single, dark point on the map. Orlando's men, dug in and waiting. Franco's small, loyal team, slipping through the shadows, and Agent Sloan, believing she had a full tactical team behind her, not knowing they were already 10 miles away. Following a false lead, the stage was set. Eva moved into the light. Berth 9. The air was heavy with the stink of low tide and diesel. Above, the wind howled through the steel legs of the silent cranes, a low, mournful sound. She had walked this line every night in her mind, under her thin jacket. The digital wirepack Agent Sloan had insisted she wear felt like a block of ice against her ribs. She kept her hands visible, her steps measured, projecting the desperate mother. "Evan," she called, her voice stolen by the wind. "I'm here, I have the phone. I just want the papers. Evan, please." A bank of harsh floodlights snapped on, blinding her, pinning her in a sterile white circle. "He can't hear you." Orlando Caravelli stepped out from the deep shadow between two stacks of containers. He was immaculate in a dark suit, a stark contrast to the man he was dragging. Evan Briggs, bound at the wrists, his face a swollen, bruised mess. "Evie," Evan choked, blood on his lips. "Run! It's—" Orlando slammed the butt of his pistol into Evan's stomach, silencing him. He shoved Evan to his knees. "She didn't come for you, you idiot," Orlando sneered, his voice echoing in the sudden quiet. "She's not here to save you. She's here for her daughter's future." Evan's head snapped up. He looked at Eva, and in his eyes, she saw the final, crushing realization he was not a player. He was just the bait. "That's enough, Orlando." Franco's voice. It did not boom, it cut. He, Rico, and two other men emerged from the opposite end of the alley, forming a loose, dangerous semicircle. They were flanked by steel, their weapons held low and ready. "Ah, Franco. You came," Orlando said, smiling, spreading his arms wide. "You brought your whole family, but I brought the high ground." Red laser dots, sharp and steady, appeared on the asphalt around Franco's feet. They came from at least 2, maybe 3. Sniper positions high up on the loading cranes. It was a perfect stalemate. "You broke the code," Franco said, his voice flat, ignoring the lasers. "You put eyes on a child. You don't touch the families. Orlando, that was the law. That law died with your father," Orlando spat, his civility vanishing. "The old rules burned the night he decided to steal this port from his partners. Tonight, we settle all the family business." A distant siren grew closer. Agent Sloan, her car, a dark sedan, skidded to a halt at the entrance to the pier, blocking the only way out. But she was alone. Only 2 other agents scrambled out of the car with her, handguns drawn, looking wildly around. "Where is Rusk?" Sloan yelled, her voice frantic. "Where is my tactical support?" Orlando's smile was predatory. "Your support seems to have been delayed, a technical problem." The betrayal hung in the air, cold and absolute. Sloan was exposed. "Now," Orlando commanded, nodding to the cranes. The night exploded. Gunfire erupted from all sides at once. It was not a firefight. It was an ambush. Sloan and her agents were instantly pinned behind their car. Franco and Rico returned fire. A disciplined staccato, their bullets sparking against the containers Orlando's men were using for cover. In the chaos, Orlando moved. He dropped Evan and lunged for Eva, yanking her back against his body. He locked one arm around her throat, crushing the air from her lungs, and pressed the hot, wet muzzle of his pistol hard against her shoulder. "Stop," he roared, dragging her into the center of the light. "Stop, or she dies now." The gunfire sputtered and ceased, replaced by the ringing in Eva's ears. "Drop your guns, Franco," Orlando yelled, his voice giddy with power. "Drop them, or I will put a bullet through her spine now." Franco was perfectly still. He looked at Orlando. He looked at the gun pressed to Eva's flesh. He looked into her terrified eyes. She was his weak point, and she was about to die for it. Without hesitation, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He let his custom pistol fall from his hand. It clattered onto the wet ground. "Capo!" "No," Rico hissed. "He did it." Orlando laughed, triumphant. "The great Villani, the ghost, brought to his knees by a waitress." "Now, the final piece of business," Orlando said, pulling out his phone while keeping the gun locked on Eva. "You think this is just about the port. This is about history." He turned the phone screen toward Franco. A grainy video played. A man's voice, speaking in Sicilian. Franco's father, he was naming names, detailing exactly how he planned to betray his partners in Italy, how he would keep the entire Port Providence operation for himself. "I have the original," Orlando said, his voice dropping. "The master. I send this file, and the old world families will hunt you. Franco, They will gut you for your father's sins. You will not last the week." He pressed the gun harder into Ava. "Or, you give me the new system, the cryptocurrency keys, every ledger, every wallet, your entire digital future. You transfer it all to me, your future, for her life." It was the perfect trap, his father's legacy or his own. "All right," Franco said. His voice was hoarse. He raised his hands. "You win. Just let her breathe. Push her forward. Let me see she's not hurt, and I'll make the transfer." A wise choice. Orlando smiled and shoved Eva one step forward, creating a foot of space between them. It was the mistake he had been waiting for. Eva had spent 10 years carrying unbalanced trays, heavy with hot coffee and plates, through crowded, chaotic rooms. She knew balance, she knew timing, and she knew how to use an unexpected weight. The BPPI wire pack in her jacket pocket was hard, dense, and heavy. She didn't scream. She didn't hesitate. In one fluid, practiced motion, she ripped the heavy radio pack from her jacket, pivoted on her heel, and flung it with all her strength at Orlando's head. The device, a solid block of metal and plastic, struck him square in the temple. Orlando roared, a sound of pure, surprised agony. His hand flew to his head, his gun fired, a blind reflex, a wild shot. Eva felt a searing, white-hot pain explode in her left shoulder. It wasn't a direct hit. It was a deep, grazing tear of metal, ripping through muscle and fabric. She cried out, stumbling back. "Now!" Franco bellowed. He didn't dive for his gun. He dove for her. He crossed the 10 feet in an instant, tackling her at the waist, wrapping his entire body around her as they crashed to the asphalt, shielding her just as the pier lit up. High above, the sniper who had been aiming at Franco turned his rifle. Rico, waiting for that 1-second distraction, fired. The sniper on the crane slumped over, silent. Agent Sloan, seeing her chance, opened fire from behind the car. Orlando, staggering, blood pouring from the gash on his head, scrambled behind a large red container. He was hit, he was beaten, but he was not finished. "If I can't have the port," he shrieked, his voice dissolving into madness. "No one can." He slammed his fist onto a black remote detonator in his hand, a container 30 yards away, one marked with a red hazmat warning. Detonated. The explosion was not a sound. It was a physical blow. A massive fireball rolled into the night sky, throwing Franco and Eva like rag dolls, the shockwave lifting them off the ground. Fire and shrapnel rained down. Alarms blared. The pier was a sudden, roaring inferno. Smoke, chaos, and the flash of emergency lights flickered against the orange flames. The world dissolved into fire and sound. The shockwave threw Eva backward, but Franco was already moving, shielding her body with his own. Shrapnel rained down on the containers around them. His arm hooked around her waist, lifting her almost completely off the ground as the heat scorched the air. Her ankle buckled. A cry of pain ripped from her throat. "Titengo Io, Eva, I've got you." He grunted, his voice a low rumble against the roar of the fire. He half-dragged, half-carried her toward the relative safety of the main yard, away from the chain reaction of secondary explosions. He finally pushed her behind a solid concrete barrier, shielding her as debris pattered down. The air was thick with smoke, and the smell of the ocean mixed with burning fuel. "It's over," he panted, cupping the back of her head, his gloved hand sticky with her blood or his. He did not know. He pressed his forehead against hers, a gesture of desperate grounding. His Italian accent was thick, the English words forced out. "E finito? You are safe. I promise you. You are safe." Eva's hands clutched the lapels of his ruined suit jacket, her knuckles white, just breathing him in. Sirens, which had been distant, suddenly became immediate. The flashing red and blue lights cut through the smoke. Armored vehicles rolled onto the tarmac, and figures in tactical gear swarmed the yard. BPPI hands in the air, "Do not move, Orlando." Dazed and bleeding from the head, was pulled from beneath an overturned forklift. Screaming curses, the remaining few of his crew, stunned by the blast, offered no resistance. Agent Mariah, her sidearm drawn but pointed downward, approached the concrete barrier. Her eyes met Franco's over Eva's head. It was a silent, complex understanding. He had delivered. He had given them the keys to Orlando's operation and, more importantly, the evidence to dismantle the corrupt faction within his own Villani legacy. Franco slowly raised his hands, never taking his eyes off Eva. "Franco Villani, you are under arrest," Mariah said, her voice formal but lacking triumph. Another agent moved in with restraints. Franco did not resist as the cold metal clicked around his wrists. He only had one request, his voice hoarse. "Let me say goodbye to her and to her mother." Mariah looked at the man who had just orchestrated the downfall of the entire coastal smuggling ring. His file was now thick with cooperation warrants. She gave a single, curt nod. The agent stepped back, giving them 6 feet. Franco immediately dropped to one knee in front of Eva. Ignoring the pull of the cuffs, he looked at her, his gaze intense, wiping a smear of soot from her cheek with his thumb. "Listen to me, Eva," he said, demanding her full attention. "I am not like the other men in your life. I am not going to disappear." Eva's breath hitched, tears mixing with the grime. "I'm going to give my testimony. I'm going to answer for what I have done, and when it is finished, I will come back. Cleaner." He took a deep breath. "You can wait for me, or you can build a new life. I will not ask you to hold, but I will come back to you. That is a promise." It was the clearest declaration he could make. It was everything. Eva, her eyes still wet, did not say a word. Instead, she leaned forward, ignoring the federal agents surrounding them, ignoring the sirens and the smoke. She wrapped her arms around his neck and pulled his face to hers. This kiss was not the desperate, fiery collision they had shared before. This was deep. It was slow. It was a commitment made in the ashes of their old lives. It tasted of smoke, salt, and finality. It lingered, a silent answer to his promise. Right there in the glare of the flashing blue lights, the cameras of the BPPI agents, documenting the scene, captured the impossible image: the waitress in her torn apron and the mafia boss in handcuffs, locked in an embrace as the criminal underworld of Port Providence burned behind them. Weeks turned into 2 months. The Port Providence Gazette ran headlines for a solid week: massive raid at Port Cripple's coastal crime network. The BPPI received commendations. Buried deep in the follow-up articles, in the 8th paragraph, was a vague reference to cooperation from a high-level organizational leader currently pending a reduced sentence. The Harbor Light Diner reopened its night shift. The bullet holes were patched, the broken glass replaced. It was cleaner now, brighter, and it was busy. The story of the mysterious customer who left a $5,000 tip had become a local legend, and people drove from 2 towns over just to sit in the booth where it happened. Eva had hired a new line cook, a young guy named Sal, and another waitress. Maddie was thriving in her new school. The therapy sessions finally working. It was late, nearing 2 in the morning on a Tuesday. Eva was wiping down the counter, tired but satisfied. A long, black limousine, the kind that did not belong in this part of town, pulled up to the curb. The driver, dressed in a simple black suit, got out and entered the diner. He did not order coffee. He simply placed a thick, cream-colored envelope on the counter. "This is for the driver said, his voice neutral. "An advance from the Port Reconstruction Fund." Eva frowned. Picking it up, it was addressed to Beneficiary E.E. Inside was a cashier's check for an amount that made her knees weak, but beneath it was a small, stiff card. It was handwritten in familiar, strong italics. "Roses do grow back on the coast. F." Eva's breath caught in her throat. It was not a confession, not a love letter. It was a fact. It was an update. It was his way of saying he had kept his word. He was alive. Whether he was in witness protection or a low-security federal facility, he was alive, and he was thinking of her. A slow, genuine smile spread across her face for the first time in months. An hour later, Eva locked the front door. She turned the neon open sign off, casting the diner into a warm, dim glow. Maddie was fast asleep in the back booth, her head pillowed on her backpack. Eva gently lifted her daughter, Maddie's small body heavy and warm in her arms. She paused at the door, looking out at the harbor. The fog was rolling in, thick and quiet, shrouding the rebuilt sections of the port. The night was still. Then, far down the coastal road, almost lost in the mist, a pair of familiar, expensive headlights flashed once, a bright, quick signal, and then, just as quickly, the car continued on, disappearing into the night. Eva held Maddie a little tighter, her smile remaining. He was out there, and he was coming back. Thank you so much for listening to the story. We would love to know where in the world you are tuning in from. Please leave a comment below to connect with us and share your thoughts. We invite you to subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and give us extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.